Hey there, Ubertuberland. Ed here from Jack of All Trades. WorkSharp belt drive knife sharpener. I've had this thing for a number of years. I use it fairly regularly, and let me take some time out of your day and let you know what I think of the product after using it for several years. But before we get into that, let me please say, please go down and hit the like and subscribe button. You can also comment on my videos. I try to read all the comments I possibly can, but I need subscribers, and I need people to like, and I need people to comment to up the algorithms with YouTube. So if you would just take a quick moment, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and do me the favor. I'm not on Patreon. I'm not doing this for money. I just like the subscribers, and I just like to hear myself talk. And if I can help somebody out in the process, that's great. That's the intent and purpose of this whole thing anyway. So let's get right into the WorkSharp. Initially, I had no intention of buying this thing. Excuse me. I saw it on the infomercial. I am not a gadget guy. I don't get off on the gizmos and gadgets, but something I have struggled with my entire life is using a whetstone or a flat stone. And I've tried several different knife sharpening systems, and I just haven't been able to find anything that works. So, spoiler alert, I love this thing, and I'm going to show you why here in a little bit. Super easy to use. It gets the knives razor sharp. Even when they dull up, it's just, touch them up real quick on the device, and they work great. So, enough talking. I've got my cup of blackberry tea. I've got my WorkSharp. Let's relocate the camera so you can get a good view of this thing. I'll get the gizmo plugged in, and we'll sharpen a knife with it, and I'll show you why I like it. I'll show you what I don't like about it and what I do like about it. All right, so this is the tool. It's really a simple operation, but let's go over some of the likes and the dislikes about it. First off, let's go with the dislikes, because they are far and few between. It's primarily plastic. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of plastic stuff. And in this particular case, this guard here in particularly being made out of plastic, there's a known issue with this thing, and this is one that I've had since it was new. And you can see here, let me get up close so you can get a good view. You can see right there, focus, damn you, there we go. So you can see right there, it's actually cut into the plastic a little bit. And what that is that's a result of sparks and the heat from the belt actually cutting in and distorting the plastic. And that's a problem. And they know it's out there, they just haven't come up with any kind of a fix for it. The good thing is I've replaced this once in 4 years that I've had this, and they only cost about $7 plus shipping. So they're really inexpensive, and you can buy them right from the WorkSharp website. You can buy them on Amazon. I'll put a link down below in the description of where you can get these. So it's really not that big a deal if you have to replace one, but it is kind of annoying, and it only happens on the one side. The other side you can see is nice and clean. That's because I do believe the rotation is this way. Yep, there's the arrow. So the rotation is this way, and what happens is the sparks come down, and they kind of land in here, and they melt the plastic a little bit, and also the blade heating up doesn't help it any either. But you can see it's only on the front side, on the one side that it does it. And WorkSharp knows that that's a problem. They just don't know how to fix it. That's one of the things that I don't like about it. The other thing that I don't like about it is there's two adjustments nuts on the back here to keep this guard from wiggling around, and you actually have to physically tighten those down with a pliers or some kind of a tool. And you don't need to tighten them down much, you just need to snug them down enough so that this guard doesn't wiggle on here, because otherwise if the guard wiggles, your sharpening angles are going to get thrown off. So all I do is I usually have a pliers with me handy, and it can be any kind of a pliers. It can be It can be a needle nose, it can be pretty much anything. It could be a vice grip. And all I do is I take, and when I get the guard on there, I just give it a little, turn and snug it up. And it doesn't need to be much, and it keeps it on there nice and solid, and it doesn't move. Okay. A little known thing that people who even have work sharps don't really know about is that if you pull this lever here, you can actually rotate this around. And I don't know why you would want to do that. I don't know why you'd want to hold it like this. Other than the fact that if you are ginger with it, you actually can clamp this in a vise and hold it upright like this. And then, you know, if you take the guard off, this does more than just sharpen knives. You can actually use this as a belt sander in this direction. So it's got other purposes besides just sharpening knives, but this does rotate, which is kind of slick. You just have to be careful because if you rotate it too much, this will actually come off, and you don't want to do that unless you're prepared to do a little bit of reassembly. For the most part, you're going to do most of your operations like this. Another thing is it's got a two-position switch here. You can either push this button, this switch down, and it's spring-loaded and it releases, or you can push it up and it stays on. And that's actually kind of handy. So when I sharpen knives, I use the momentary side of it. When I'm doing things like maybe touching up a lawnmower blade or something like that, or sometimes I even use them to fine sand on knife handles or whatever. You can put the switch in the other position and it'll stay on until you actually release it manually, which is kind of nice. It's got a little screw wheel here. That's to help with the tracking. So you can see as I turn it, the belt will track from side to side. And you want it to track generally in the middle. Changing belts on it is very simple. You just simply push down on the head here, give it a little bit of a third turn. It loosens up the belt. You can take the belt off. Then you can put a new belt on. Just got to feed it around the wheels. It's not that tough to do. And then you just turn the head and let it pop back up. I give it a couple of rotations with my hand to make sure that the belt is lined up where it's supposed to be. Tap the trigger a couple of times and you can see it's now good to go. It comes with two guards. This guard here, this black guard, gives you a 45-degree sharpening angle. That's what you use for things like your kitchen knives or things of that effect. You can take that guard off and you can put this other guard on, this gray guard. And you can see on the gray guard it's labeled 50 degrees for hunting knives and things of that effect. There's a 65-degree edge for sharpening scissors, and there is a serrated edge here for doing serrated blades. I've never tried to do a serrated blade because I despise serrated knives with a passion, so I don't even really try to sharpen them. But you're supposed to be able to just put it up on the guard and you just sharpen off the back side of the serrated blade, and it's supposed to sharpen your serrated knives up. I've never tried it. I don't own a serrated knife, so I apologize for not being able to do that. Belts. You can get a wide variety of belts. Now this happens to be the version that's got the 3/4 inch belt. There's another Work Sharp version that's got wider belts. I like this size. It seems to work very well for me. Truth be told, when I realized how much I liked this, I actually went out and bought another one. And it's still in the box in the cupboard because if this one ever takes a crap on me, I want a replacement. Because eventually someday they're going to stop making them, and that's just the way of life, and it sucks. But I like this thing so much I wanted to make sure I had a replacement. You can buy belts on Amazon. You can buy belts at Northern Tool. There's all kinds of places you can buy Work Sharp belts. They're easy to come across online. Again, they're $6 to $8 depending on where you buy them from. I bought this set of belts on Amazon. I want to say they were $7.99, and I've got Prime, so the shipping was free. I bought 2 packages of them and I had them in 4 days. So belts are still really easy to get. I've got about 6 or 7 packages of belts left that I'm keeping in reserve in case they ever stop making them. So the tool is, it's well engineered, it's well thought out, it works well. I use it for more than just sharpening knives, but of course, knife sharpening is its primary purpose. Now let's have a quick demo, a little sip of tea. So what I've got is I've got a Chicago Cutlery garden variety chef's knife. And to show you that it's dull, there's an old file. And oh my God, what am I doing? You couldn't cut air with that. There is nothing left. Let's just, that knife is screwed. You couldn't cut anything with that knife. Yeah, it's awful now. Let's just make sure it's damn good and awful. Okay, I've got her good and pooched. One other thing while I'm looking at this knife that's a problem with this grinder. If you're one of these people that likes to have a needle point tip, this belt grinder will actually round the tip a bit, and there's just not really any way that I've figured out to stop that from happening. If somebody out there knows how to do it, please let me know, short of using a whetstone. But I have yet to be able to figure out how to really stop it from, you can see that tip is no longer a needle point tip anymore. It's kind of rounded over, and that's just part of the nature of the beast. But I'm not one of these people that likes a needle point tip on his knife or needs a needle point tip on my knife for any reason. Okay, so we've got that good and dull. It's good and pooched. I've got an 80 grit belt in here. I've got the coarsest belt because I knew I was going to put that file to it, and I knew I was going to make it just completely hosed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few swipes with the 80 grit. I'm going to swap it up to the 220 grit, and then I'll put the honing belt on it, and then we'll see how that knife does after a few swipes of this. So I'm going to try and get this so you can see it on camera, but you can see there's an outer edge and an inner edge. When you put your knife in here, you want to push the blade towards that outer edge, and that's your guide. It's not the inner edge, it's the outer edge. That's your guide. And you want to hold it straight up and down, and when you squeeze the trigger, you just drag the knife across and let it come completely off, and then release the trigger. Always put the knife in when the machine's not running, squeeze the trigger, and drag it across. And don't leave the blade sitting in one spot for a long length of time, or you'll actually cut a groove into that blade that you don't want. So as soon as you hit this trigger, start dragging it across. Okay, I've got 3 swipes on it with the 80 grit, and it's already brought it to an edge. We'll give it 4 swipes. Okay, that's with 80 grit. I'm going to grab my piece of paper here. Let's see what she does. Okay, it's better than it was, but it's still not sharp. We have just basically reestablished the bevel. Okay, now we're going to take and we're going to just loosen that nut up a little. Now we're going to switch the belts, and I'm going to go to the 220 belt. Now I've been using this 220 belt for a little while. It's not brand new, so it's got a little use on it. These belts actually last for quite a while. Give it a few rotations, put the guard back on, give it a little snug up. Now let's run it on the 220 belt. Okay, now I've done about a dozen swipes on each side, and I did that on purpose because we ran this knife across a file, for crying out loud. I mean, it was truly and duly screwed. So I wanted to give it a fair chance, but now I've run it on the 220 belt. Let's see how she does on the old piece of paper here. Let's zoom out so you can see. It's much, much better. So now, let's put the honing belt in. Swap the belt out. Now these honing belts are just that. All they're designed to do is to take the last little bit of burr off. If you want a truly sharp blade, you really need to do this step. And it's actually very, very noticeable when you've done this. So we're going to do 6 swipes across the machine with the honing belt on, and let's zoom in here just a little bit. I'm trying to keep this real time. We'll do 6 swipes on each side with the honing belt, and then we'll go back to the paper. That's 6. Zoom back out. Same piece of paper. I am putting almost no pressure on that knife, and you can see how ridiculously sharp it is. If you can't cut tomatoes with that, you've got a problem. But I mean, you saw me. I dragged this thing across a file and totally pooched it. And then just a few swipes, it didn't take more than a few minutes, and I've got a very, very sharp blade. So there it is, the Work Sharp knife sharpening system. Say that 3 times real fast with a good drunk. I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, you're going to meet people out there that are these knife sharpening purists that say you have to use a whetstone to properly sharpen a knife. I say to those people, pound sand. If I need a work sharp, or if I want to use a work sharp to sharpen my knives, so be it. I make knives, for crying out loud. I've got a great big belt grinder over there that I can use to sharpen knives, and it does work. But you know what? When all I want to do is quickly sharpen up the kitchen knives or put a fine edge on my hunting knife, or I'm out at my hunting cabin, or I'm out at the lake place or whatever, and I want to shine up the fillet knife, get it ready for filleting fish, or like I said, sharpen up my hunting knife to take it hunting. There's nothing wrong with doing it this way. I say do whatever it takes to get a sharp knife. And here's why. There is nothing more dangerous than a dull knife, except maybe a sharp knife in the hands of an angry woman. That might be pretty dangerous, but I try to keep those situations to a minimum. There's nothing more dangerous than a dull knife. And why is that? Because what happens is you have to put more pressure on a dull knife to do the same work that a sharp knife can do. And when you're putting pressure on that, you inherently lose control if you slip, or if it all of a sudden shoots through whatever it is you're sharpening. It's just far more dangerous. And if you have a nice sharp knife, it'll just glide through whatever you need to cut, and you don't have to worry about putting so much pressure on it that when you finally make it through the cut, you're winging the knife off into the wild blue yonder and sticking it into the wall or your dog or something of that effect. A sharp knife is critical for doing work and doing it as safely as possible. So I say do whatever it takes for you to get your knife sharp. If you can manage a whetstone, God bless you, please do so. I am horrible at whetstoning a knife. And it's embarrassing. My father was a butcher, for crying out loud. His dad owned a butcher shop, and my father worked on it. My dad could sharpen a knife. He could sharpen an axe so sharp you could shave with it. I do not have that skill. That's one thing I didn't inherit. I inherited his good looks. I did not inherit his knife sharpening abilities. So That all being said, do what you have to do to get your knife sharp. This is extremely easy and an extremely good way to get a sharp blade on your knife. Do what it takes. Anyway, this is Ed from Jack of All Trades. Thank you for watching. Please, please, please hit that like and subscribe button on the bottom. Give me some comments, and we will see you on the next video. Have a good week.